Hello, and welcome to the Female Founder Friday podcast with me, Lindsay White. I'm passionate about helping female entrepreneurs be great leaders, build high-performing teams, and create inspiring workplace cultures through innovative talent programs and practices. Because when people feel like they belong at work, they deliver their very best and businesses thrive. The Female Founder Friday podcast is all about connecting with the most incredible female entrepreneurs to talk about their journey to creating their own business, the mistakes they've made along the way, and how they view their own leadership. And I'm challenging all of my guests this season to take my leadership style quiz. And during each episode, we'll be digging into their leadership style and how it impacts the way they lead in their life and their business. And if you're interested in learning more about your leadership style and want some of my top tips to help you lead more effectively, you can take the quiz right now. Just check out the show notes or head over to 𝐊𝐼𝐿TageLeadership.ca and click on the button at the top of the page that says Take the Quiz. Then you can share your results, connect with my guests, and join the conversation on Instagram by following me at 𝐊𝐼𝐿TageLeadership. My guest on this week's episode is the amazing Lindsay Harle-Kadtz. I love Lindsay, and she often uses the word quirky to describe herself. It's a big part of why she never did fit in the buttoned-up corporate world. And after her own experience with depression, anxiety, and an eating disorder, Lindsay realized she was tired of being the square peg in the round hole. She really was burnt out. Because she had a leader that deeply cared about her, she was able to move forward, find her own voice, and now, as the founder of BRP Consulting, Lindsay supports other organizations in creating cultures that are filled with fun, connected to their values, and are really incredible spaces where people can perform their best. I love spending time with Lindsay. She has such an incredible sense of humor. We do try and keep on track during this episode, but you can tell how much we enjoy spending time together and how much we have in common in terms of the work we do and the philosophy we bring to it. So I know you'll have a great time listening to this episode. I have my friend and fellow Lindsay here today, Lindsay Harle-Kadtz. And we're going to try, I'm going to make a little statement here right at the beginning. We're trying and keep this professional. We're going to try and keep this podcast to 30 minutes. But because we're the Lindsays, and there's a few of us, we have a bit of a collective. We're not quite the Borg, but it's close. We're gonna try not to go super crazy. We've already spent the last 22 minutes actually doing that. So hopefully it's mostly out of our systems by now. But I'm really glad to have my fellow Lindsay here today to tell us about her journey to becoming a female founder and what that's looked like for her. So welcome, fellow Lindsay, to the program.
Thank you, fellow Lindsay, for having me on the program. Also, thank you for using a Star Trek reference. That made me very happy.
Right?
Yes.
Yes, if you didn't get the Star Trek reference, you need to look it up. Well, call me. I'll fill you in. You've had a very cool journey, and I don't even think I know all of it. Up to and including some recent developments in your business as a female founder. And I personally selfishly, I want to hear the journey and the story. So, tell us about that. What does that look like?
All right. Well, I was born on a sunny morning. Just joking. No, well, I was born in the morning. It wasn't sunny. It was middle of the night. Anywho, neither here nor there. But that's not really my journey. So the full truth is I literally never thought that I would be an entrepreneur. Totally. I always saw myself being someone in the corporate world. I was so excited to wear that corporate suit and wear the heels and click it, clack it, and then work my way up that corporate ladder. And I was well on my way to doing that. However, life took a different turn, and I was working at one of the big four in downtown Calgary, and ended up having to face some of my own demons, being that I was depressed, I had anxiety, and I had a decade-long purging disorder that all came to a head in 2011. And at that point, when I started to get the help that I needed, it became very clear that I was not in the right avenue. So the polyester suit was just never meant to be mine, even though I looked fantastic.
I'm sure you did.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so it's going to jump around a bit, but a
Yeah.
huge reason as to why I do what I do today and why I've evolved my business into what I'm doing today with helping leaders and teams is because of the leader I had at that time in my life. And it was an exception of an experience from all the other stories that I've been told from people, and that this leader saw me. She held me accountable for choosing myself and therefore choosing my life. She created a team that, also supported me in choosing myself and choosing my life, even though I know that my not being there was a burden and my having to choose to leave was leaving them in a lurch.
Wow.
But because of that, I am, number one, here today.
Yeah.
I have been able to find my own voice.
Yeah.
I have been able to provide an ear and start conversations around very tough topics that is relevant in my business. But it's one thing that I'm more proud of is that I've been able to share stories and receive stories on people in their darkest hours, around depression, around anxiety, around eating disorders, and simply hearing them say things like they know they're not alone now because they've heard my story, and they know that they too can get through it because they've heard my story. And so that is one huge reason why today I am working with teams. Now, going through all that though, I left corporate Calgary. I started my own copywriting business at the time because I love to write. I knew there was a gap between companies and not having a proper writer, and businesses developing websites and not having a proper writer. But because of my curiosity, I would always ask these questions that would blow up holes in my client's business. so I wouldn't be able to write anything because it's like, well, there's no point to this until you figure that out.
Right.
Very quickly, it became about, well, it's not that you need content, it's that you need to know who you are. You need the DNA of your business, which is your brand.
Yeah.
So that evolved into brand development. So the brand voice aspect. You don't want me doing a logo. Hells no, you don't want me doing a logo. I once actually tried to draw one for a client and he said, good thing you just do writing. We have designers in-house. Don't worry. It's like, whoa.
Thanks.
Anyway,
thanks for that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And then that evolved into the brand development and then brand strategy and all of that. And in that work, I really started to focus in on the values.
Yeah.
A huge reason why is because back when I was getting help, I was introduced to my own values. Because so often we are not taught, what are our values? Do you take the time to go inward and understand what your values are, and that they may not be what your parents are?
Yeah.
And now, even though they may be not right, but really good values, like the ones that I grew up with were very good values, ultimately, they were not mine.
Yeah.
And so I started to understand, okay, well, values can be different. Yeah. And then because I started to do all these different values for different companies, I would hear the same values over and over and over and over again. And I was just, something all of a sudden clicked as, what the heck does that mean to you? Because I've heard this before, and how you're saying it is so generic. Yeah. Because I've written it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right? And so when I started to but pull out of my clients what a specific value meant to them in their words, in their actions, we were able to understand who they were as a business on a deeper level, which would then influence their content a lot more.
Sure.
But more so, it would influence how they themselves acted, how they themselves saw themselves. And there was always these light bulb moments with the client of, oh, we are pretty awesome. Oh, that does make us different. Oh, so it was this reigniting of their actual love for their business. Yeah. Now, in 2020, though, something happened. I don't know if you knew this, but there was a pandemic that happened. And
yes, I heard about it. Totally.
Yeah, you heard. Okay, good. I wanted to make sure. And because I had written a book called Depression, Constipation, How Pooping Saved My Sanity and Other Stories.
I love it.
And from that, I started speaking on, what do you do when you run your own business and you are in the middle of a depressive slump?
Yeah.
Because for me, my depression isn't necessarily about sitting there in feeling numb. Yeah, I feel numb, but my depression takes on a very physical form in that I get tinnitus. So my ears are ringing. I have a horrid stutter. And so if my stutter starts to kick in today, I know I need to pause for a moment. But you can't necessarily pick up the phone and have a conversation with a client to let them know that the deadline's not going to be met because you're in the middle of a depressive slump if you're stuttering over every word and you're hearing ringing in your ears.
Right.
So what do you do?
Yeah.
And so I started speaking on depression, and because of that, my clients knew, okay, well, Lindsay deals with, I want to swear a lot.
Go for
Lindsay
it.
deals with shit, obviously, because she wrote a book on pooping. And anywho, but COVID happened. Clients started reaching out saying, Lindsay, I have anxiety like I've never had before.
Yeah.
What do I do? And now I am not a psychologist. I am not a therapist. I am not a counselor. So I could not support them on that. I could not ethically support them on that.
Right. Right.
What I could do was listen.
Yeah.
What I could do was ask questions.
Yeah.
What I could do was ask, well, what values are guiding your decision making in your business at this point? Because a lot of it was around what is happening in my business, and I don't know what to tell my people. I don't know how to interact. I don't know what's going on with their clients. And because our values ultimately are our underlying beliefs upon which we take action.
Yeah.
We could then have this conversation around, okay, well, what actions make sense for you to take action now, based on your values, based on your definition, based on your beliefs as a business entity, because a business is basically a person. Yeah. At the end of the day, because, they can own property, they can be charged with crime, they can go totally. The definition of a corporation is essentially the definition of a person. Yeah. Their DNA is their brand. If the brand itself is off, then the mental health of the company is off because there's a misalignment.
There's a misalignment. That's exactly it. Yeah.
So it became very clear to me that these two things were just so interconnected. Yeah. How do you get them more interconnected? Because the numbers were there prior to COVID that mental health was becoming a larger conversation. Yeah. That it needed to be addressed. And this was before, and COVID augmented that. It fast-tracked those conversations. Sure did. And people were unfortunately left ill-equipped to support those conversations. Yeah. So what I did is I didn't necessarily, well, that's some fur. Oh no, that's my hair. Sorry. Sorry, it was tickling me. So what I knew was that this is something for me. I am way more invested in supporting these clients clearly understand what their values are and how they're taking action. Yeah. And feeling a little bit better about themselves. I even had a client, as we walked through the values in their business, say to me, wait a second, you mean I can fire with this? And I was like, oh no. Speak to an employment lawyer, speak to an HR consultant, because right now we're talking values in your branding. Yeah. But long story short is, yeah, you actually can, with good advice, of course. But if you yourself and the rest of the leadership team are not modeling these values, then no, you cannot. If you have not sat down with the individual you're looking to fire and allowed them to fully understand what this value means, and allowed them to understand and take ownership of what this value means in their role, then no. you need to give people the right tools and the proper understanding of what is expected of them, rather than just saying on their first day in an onboarding document, these are our values and this is what we stand for. You're expected to follow them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not, we could talk about that all
Yeah.
afternoon. I think that'll never work.
No. But there was, I kept thinking, well, maybe I should go into coaching. And I'm like, no. Getting my ICF coaching certification is not the thing that's meant for me, because there was a piece of it that was missing. And, I'd been able to understand and put together, okay, well, the beliefs and the mindset and the values and emotional intelligence and the subconsciousness, and that all came together for me fairly easy.
Yeah.
Not easily, but I was able to understand it and put it together and recognize, why is someone's behavior not gaining traction?
Yeah.
Well, because you may think you have a growth mindset, but you probably don't. There's probably a belief that's keeping you stalled.
Yeah.
So let's go there. But I was able to, I came across this course called Neural Change Method. And it had that scientific piece that I was missing. And it was all about that neuroplasticity and what is going on in our brains as we're working through the values, the beliefs, the mindset. How do we really change our entire world so we can properly support our brain and create the right pathways and the right neural circuits within our brain to override the old habits that we have, to override the negative thought patterns that we've ingrained and carved into our beautiful, juicy brain for so long.
Yeah.
And the more I started to work with clients on their values specifically and how are they engaging people with it, the more I recognized, and this sounds very me, no, but it became very clear that, okay, number one, people aren't toxic. It's their behaviors that are toxic.
Yes.
So if you're removing a person from the team, but yet you're not addressing that behavior will come back. Yeah. Because it was already reinforced there somehow. That neural circuit is still there. Yeah. So it started to look at a team as a neural circuit. And if we're looking at this team as a neural circuit, how are we making sure that this is a healthy neural circuit that is reinforcing the right behaviors to make it fire optimally, to make every neuron within that neural circuit, so the individuals understand how they are all interconnected, and how can the leader support that in their most healthiest manner? And that's essentially what it comes down to, is this is a team and you're all there for a reason. And does everybody understand the reason they're there? Yeah. And so that's really what evolved me into, that's what evolved me. Well, I guess that's how I evolved into the work I'm doing today, which is I essentially changed the brain of the business to support more sustainable, more impactful, more realistic workplace culture evolution. I love it. And it's fun. And I love it. And when you see these teams come together and they have this understanding of what values are and how they can use them, yes, in the good times, that's easy. It is so gosh darn easy to live our values when things are going hummingly. Hummingly, I've never said that, but I did today. But when they come against challenges, and this was actually said to me from one of my clients, team members, after I did a session with them. He's an IT engineering security, like very tech guy. Yeah. He's like, I understand values now. You've made them tangible, but even more, and this is the whole key to it. We have a foundation that we can look back to when we come against challenges to help us understand how we can move forward. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I do. So I go in and I support teams. I really understand how their values, how their brand, because the values is a piece of the brand. Sure. How that and the mental health of the team and the team connection all work together. I'm like, these are my hands, all work together for realistic, more sustainable, more permanent culture evolution. Love it. You are completely speaking my language. I love it. No wonder.
No, but it is, I mean, I love what you said there about values can't just be a word. They can't just be a phrase. They can't just be a poster on the wall.
Mhm.
Values in an organization, but also as individuals, are the things that underpin all of our behaviors.
Yes.
And when we are not behaving in alignment with those behaviors, that's when we get toxic workplaces.
Mhm.
That's when we get major conflicts. That's when we feel depressed, anxious, unhappy, unfulfilled.
Mhm.
And when we can create, first of all, a robust definition, and then we can really understand how we do that. What does
Mhm.
that look like
Mhm.
and feel
Mhm.
like and sound like? I think that's when the rubber really hits the road.
Yes, and one thing I think is that was taught to me as well, because I used to think certain definitions were right or wrong. That's not the case.
Oh no.
Definitions
No.
just are, but it's making sure that you know what your definition is so that you can properly attract the people who understand and are drawn
Yes.
to that definition
Yes.
more than another. And
Yeah.
that then becomes more about the right fit.
Yeah.
And so and I specifically, this is for me, the word safety, because I work with a lot of construction companies and they have very different definitions.
You bet.
Therefore, they attract different workers.
Yeah.
And it's neither's right nor wrong.
No. It's
They
about creating
are.
that clear definition
Yeah.
so that people can identify and you can help them identify
Yeah.
in your
Yeah.
recruitment process.
Mm-hmm.
This is the right individual. This is the right talent.
Yeah.
I think it's also important. I mean, I work with organizations who are trying to use values to really create cultures of success.
Mm-hmm.
Well, success is another big, like safety, another big, huge, juicy word.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What does success mean? For a lot of people, success equals the number of dollars in your bank account.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, that's just the way you measure success. One
One
way,
way. Yep. Yep.
one way. So then you get underneath. Well, what actually is really, it's not about the money. What is it about the ability to do that? What makes that the measure? Like you're right. I mean, if there's like 8 billion people in this world, there's 8 billion different ways to define those big, beautiful, juicy values words.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's in creating that clarity that people can understand and connect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That makes
Mm-hmm.
sense to me. I can bring that back and connect with my value of safety.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So I think that's beautiful. Again, I love it. We could talk about that ad nauseum. We'd probably drive everybody else crazy and they would turn off the show.
We said we would try to keep it to a half an hour.
We would try.
Try.
It was try. It was try. It wasn't we would. It was try. What I do want to do before we go too far down the values rabbit hole is ask Lindsay about her leadership style. And she took my leadership style quiz. You can take it too. There's a link in the show notes. You can go to highvoltageleadership.ca, click on the button. It says take the quiz. It's very obvious. It's a real indicator.
Direct action is always clarity.
Yeah. Clarity. Press the button. Take the quiz. It's quick. It's easy. It only takes a couple minutes. You're going to learn something about your leadership style. I'm going to give you some great leadership tips that you can use right away. And then you can compare, see if you're the same style as Lynn's. So tell us, what is your leadership style, my friend?
I'm a little combination. I guess that doesn't really surprise anyone.
No,
I mean, so many personalities over here, but it's the coaching and the supporting.
Yes.
No directing, no delegating. I
love it.
But no, it's the coaching and the supporting piece.
Yeah.
Which there was a magpie out my window, which does not surprise me at all.
No.
Because of what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And for me, that really comes down to the whole piece of listening and how, and not active listening, but this truly deep listening and understanding how are we doing it? What is actually happening in our, and I learned the math of listening from brilliant gent, one of the leaders in the world on listening, called Oscar Trimboli, and he talks about the math of listening. And in it, we learned that we speak at 125 words a minute on average.
Yeah.
So this is the average human. We think at 900 words a minute. And so there's so many words that we're trying to sort through. And so very rarely is the first thing we say the thing that we need to say. Even more interesting, though, is that we listen at 400 words a minute. So if we're listening to somebody and they're speaking at 125, we're listening at 400. Well, as we're listening, we're already trying to fill in all those 300, 200 and some extra words.
You're asking me
I don't do math.
my head.
I don't do. I know.
Podcast.
There's a big disconnect,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
So it's imperative then, with the listening portion and the listening learnings that I've been practicing and implementing in my world, both in my personal world, my personal life.
Yes.
It's like, yes, I very clearly have a world of my own. And my professional life,
yes,
is stop trying to fill in the words and be curious.
Yeah.
And start asking questions and let them, the speaker, sort through those 900 words, because chances are they have the answers. And this was really all I ever do, and not to downplay, but this is what I do when I would create the brands, is the words with the clients. I stripped away all the extra words.
Yes.
And so it's just letting people sort through. And then you give it to them. They're like, yes, that's it. How'd you do that? Well, that was you who said it.
Yeah.
Just stripped away all the other crap you said. Right?
No, but
so
I love that. I love how you connect those things, because that really is true. I would never have thought of it that way. But absolutely, when someone helps you create a brand, that's what they're doing, is they're just deeply listening and connecting to what you're really passionate about. And then the other part I would add is translating.
Yeah.
The translating part is really important.
It's so important. And that's why it's important that that we allow our people, the teams, rather than saying, here's a branding document and letting it die off. How do you breathe life into it? Well, you engage your people in it and you ask them what it means to them.
Yeah.
What does this mean? How are you going to take ownership of this
as
a person in our business, as an entity as a cell in our business, so that we can let you thrive and so that we can all optimally thrive as an entity in our larger community.
Totally. I love that. And with that coaching and that supportive leadership style, it makes perfect sense that listening and being curious would be a huge part of those skill sets, because that's, coaching is really all about deep listening, deep connection, deep curiosity about the person that you're with in the moment, and then supporting them as they explore. Coaching is about being a guide. Right? It's not about me as the coach. It's about my client and just helping them maneuver and navigate, create that roadmap for themselves and have their journey. Right. So I love that. Listening is such a huge part of that. Yeah. Awesome. That doesn't surprise me at all. I do want to ask you this question. We sort of, we guffawed prior to recording about this one, but where have you made, I'm going to use the word mistakes, which sounds very heavy, missteps, learning opportunities, my friend. Where have those come from? And what have you learned?
Well, I've never misstepped, so I haven't learned a thing. I just take perfect step after perfect step after. No, that is not wrong.
She's grinning the whole time while she says that. You can't see her face, but I can.
It's perfection over here, not even remotely. I have failed so much.
Yeah.
I would say for me, there's been a lot of hard lessons, but I think the one that really stands out is dignity. And how have I at some point inadvertently done harm because I didn't want to have a hard conversation? And so very early on in my career, I ended a relationship that should have been a phone call, and it was with an email. That bridge has been burned.
Yeah.
Then a few years later, I needed to end another relationship, not because it was because we were taking our businesses in different directions.
Yeah.
And I knew if we had stayed together on the path that we were going, our personal relationship would have been harmed.
Right.
And I cared too much about this individual to have that happen. However, so this time, and it was during COVID, this time I decided to do it right. It was face to face, all over Zoom because COVID.
Right.
Right. And I was just so quick and so cold because I had to get it over with. Very fortunately, it was a woman, she and I have both gone and done our own work and held ourselves both accountable to how could we have done that relationship better.
I love it.
But then I realized, okay, well, it's not just about having the hard conversation. It's about having the hard conversation with compassion.
Yes.
And so fast forward a year or so, and I ended up having to end another relationship, but with my business coach at the time. And well, this individual, they were the coach I needed until they were no longer the coach I needed.
Yeah.
And so again, what I did, it was face to face over Zoom because COVID lasted a long time. It was really around framing. Here's what I so appreciate about what you have done and what you've brought out of me. And you were absolutely the individual I needed to. And now because of that, I know I need to move on.
Yeah.
And I am forever grateful for what you brought into my life. And that relationship, it went well, and we are still in communication. We still champion one another. And so I think it's, you're not going to get that hard conversation right the first time.
No.
But if there's anything I can say is that always start with, here's what you really did appreciate about the relationship, even if it has gone sour.
Yeah.
Because at some point it worked. At some point it did something. Even if it didn't, it still got you a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something to be grateful and appreciative of.
100%.
So always frame that, and then be very clear on what that ending is.
Yeah.
Or if it's not an ending, what your boundary now has to be in place, what outcome you hope that there is. And also recognize that they are allowed to have emotions. They are allowed to feel, they're going to.
Yeah.
So
I would also add, acknowledge that you have emotions.
Yeah. Well, yeah, don't just be a cold-hearted bitch.
No, yeah, no. And this is what's tricky is, ultimately, underneath all of that is that for the vast majority of us, we don't want to hurt other people's feelings. We really don't want to cause pain for others. That's why difficult conversations are difficult because we have to deliver information to someone that we know they're not going to want to hear. And we ultimately don't want to cause them pain. That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Be a compassionate human and understand that it is difficult for them, but it's also difficult for you. Nobody wants to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think one of the most powerful things you can do in those moments when you have to deliver difficult information is say, this is really hard for me. I feel really nervous about having this conversation with you. I have to tell you something that I know that you might not want to hear, and I don't want to hurt your feelings. That's what I'm afraid. It is okay to acknowledge and call that out, but then you still have to deliver it in a way that's clear, because Brene Brown says, clear is kind. Yeah. Being clear with people is doing them a kindness. You need to give them the information. They need to have the feedback. They need to know that you need to move on. They need to know that the relationship has to come to whatever that is. You have to be clear about it. That's doing them a service, ultimately. So I love that. I love actually that's the lesson you're offering today, is that there's a great way to have those conversations. Never going to be perfect at it.
No, you're never going to love them.
And
if you do, well then let's go back to your values, please.
Right?
But yeah.
One of the things I've done hundreds and hundreds of layoffs and terminations over the years for a variety of reasons. I've had to tell people they don't have a job.
Mhm.
One of the top 5 most atrocious things that's going to happen to you in your life. Up there with divorce and your house burning down and someone you loved. Like, it's really one of the worst moments when someone comes to you and says, you don't have a job anymore. Again, you should always feel bad about doing that. If you're going to deliver that kind of information and you don't feel terrible, first of all, you need to check for a pulse. Second of all, you need to check for a conscience. Like, you may need to speak to a professional. But anyways, just acknowledge.
Not that we're judging.
Not we're judging. We're just saying. We're
just
saying. But you should always feel like some kind of emotion about that personally.
Yeah.
Use that empathy in the conversation to connect and to deliver information with, as you said, the word dignity. Be dignified. Be dignified in the way you deliver that feedback or that bad news or disconnection or whatever it is. So I love that. That's a beautiful lesson, because as entrepreneurs, we have to talk about hard things with people, whether they're our employees, our contractors, our vendors, our clients.
Yeah.
We always have to have hard conversations with ourselves.
Oh,
hello.
Do you want those lessons? Oh my God. No.
For real.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For real.
But that whole thing is when we can actually hold up that mirror to ourselves and hold ourselves accountable to where maybe we misstepped and recognize when we're perhaps in the wrong, recognize I need to apologize both to them, and then I also need to forgive myself because I was a younger version of who I wasn't. But we cannot be scared to look in that mirror.
No,
we can't be. Otherwise, why are there mirrors?
Why? Yes. Why are there mirrors? No, but you're right. I mean, the ability to self-reflect is really important. And I'll like, shameless plug. If you find that difficult, that's where you need a coach. Coach, you can't read the label from inside the bottle. Coach will help you hold up that mirror, hold some accountability, actually show you where you are killing it.
Yes. Yeah.
Show you where you are absolutely rocking it, where you are awesome, help you creep right up to that leading edge, that space where it's really scary because you're not sure you can do it. Hold your hand, look over, and then just gently nudge you over the edge sometimes when you need it.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Yep. And there's not, or there shouldn't be, an ounce of judgment along the way from a good coach.
Yeah. If you're getting judged by your coach, you should stop working with that coach immediately. And I have no equivocation about saying that. That's a terrible coach. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So many beautiful lessons today. And one more thing, I want to acknowledge how courageously and boldly you share your story, because all of this deeply rooted in your own personal experience, and what an incredible journey you've had in creating now a business, but also, an impact that is so meaningful for so many. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. I sure hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. And if you did enjoy today's episode, would you do me a favor? Would you give the episode a 5-star review and share it with all of your friends? I would really appreciate that. I've got a goal to impact 1,000 female founders, and with your help, we can really amplify this message. Thanks again for being a part of the show, and don't forget to connect with me and all of my guests on Instagram @HighVoltLeadership. We'll see you next Friday.